Give me a couple of minutes. I'll have to turn on the VMware and restore the nodes and restart the PC. All right, so the recording has started. Uh, a quick recap of what we have done in our recent session. So, in our last session, actually, we discussed what exactly are the firewall policies. We discussed quite a few use cases where we had a couple of VLANs behind one of the switches, and we had done this network segmentation with the help of VLANs, as long as the layer 2 is concerned on the switches. And then we thought of let's just try to add one more layer on it. So we went ahead on the firewall and created the firewall policies, which were nothing but the access control lists. So you could sort of call that we actually created uh, the extended access lists on the firewall. So as long as you're just dealing with the IPs and ports, right, and then you want to restrict the traffic on the basis of IP addresses and the ports only, then it definitely would be nothing but a possible use case of the extended access list. But then you said that, okay, I seem to be fine with the layer 2, which is with the help of VLANs. And then you sort of said that let's just try to segment the communication now with the help of one more layer. And then you went ahead with the IP layer, which is the network layer of the OSI model. And then that's why you actually created the firewall policies, right? You turned, you kept the source interface, you had the destination interface, source IP address, destination IP address, right? And yeah, you had the firewall action as well. And all these four things, including the port number, which actually makes the number 5, right? It was nothing but a general use case of the extended access list. So that's why you actually covered the network layer, right? Moving ahead, you said that, okay, I'm okay with the firewall action now, but I want to see what's actually happening with the traffic, with the packets when they cross the firewall. I want to see what is contained in those packets on the application layer. And whenever we talk about the application layer of a particular packet, it means that whenever this packet actually left any of the source, right, it could only leave when it is actually coherent with the TCP IP stack of that particular machine, right? Every machine has its own TCP IP stack. And whenever we talk about the TCP IP stack, it means all the 5 layers of the TCP IP model, right? So it would always have uh, the physical layer, uh, the data link layer, the network layer, right? And then the rest of the layers up to the application layer, and right. So application layer actually contains the payload of the packet, which means whatever the data is actually written in the in the packet, right? That is where you say that this would always be present theoretically at the application layer of this particular packet, right? And you want to see that one as well. And since ACL, which is the extended access list, is not going to help you with that, so you said that, okay, I have this firewall. Let me just demonstrate it over here. go. I see Microsoft whiteboard. Hope my view is back. I do root 1, 2, 3.
Actually, your screen is not visible.
Yeah, I'm not sharing anything actually yet. So as already said that there was a lot of stuff that actually got closed due to the restart. Hmm, let me share my whole screen. Visible now?
Yes, it's visible.
Okay. Let me check if I have the IP for this. I say IPA and then grep 192. Yeah, have the IP. So let me go back here. HTTP 128 should be fine. Will I be able to ping it? Which one is this? HTTP. I want to ping this. Okay, has to be 136. 136. There you go. Admin, and here it's AU. No need to ping now because it's up. So I'll just turn on the nodes here. Let me come back here. So I'll just explain what I was actually saying. So having a firewall in the network, I'll just try to demonstrate the use case. So was it not writing? Okay. Hmm. All right. So in our recent example, we had these couple of PCs, right? And each PC actually represents its own department. This was IT, finance, HR, right? You just connected all of them to a switch, right? And then there's a firewall, right? Now let's try to understand what is the use case of having the firewall in this particular topology, right? The first one was that whenever we have these networks, right, we can always segment them at layer 2. So layer 2 segmentation was already done, right, with the help of VLANs. Whenever you have switch, a switch is equal to one LAN network, right? It means that if you're broadcasting anything, it's going to broadcast this on all of its ports, right? And then you said that, okay, I don't want to broadcast the traffic in the whole switch in all of its ports. So what I want to do here is I want to segment this virtually, and that's why you basically say that I have virtual LANs here, right? VLANs. So you got or you achieved the segmentation with the help of VLANs, right? And then you move to the firewall. This was layer 2, right? And you're still not done yet. You're not satisfied at this particular point. So you move to the firewall. You said that let me introduce the firewall because firewall has this capability of doing the firewall action. And whenever we talk about the firewall action, it means you're going to restrict the traffic based on the IPs and ports, right? And that's nothing but ACL. And which one? It's the extended ACL, right? So you might have seen that there are, whenever we create the policies on the firewall, a lot of people call them access control policies as well, right? So you're just restricting the traffic now with the help of IPs and ports. And now that you have the concept of IPs, right? So it means you just covered layer 3, right? Which is the IP layer or the network layer, and layer 4, right? So on top of it, what else you can do? You want to move to the layer 5 now, and you want to move to the layer 6, right? And then layer 7, right? You could sort of say that I want to just play with the session layer now, right? And then you have the presentation, right? And then you have the application layer, right? Having firewall in place and then having the access control policies defined on that particular firewall, right? Where you restrict the traffic with the help of IPs and ports is going to cover the layer 3, right? And now that you have the services as well, because firewall action contains 4 things, 5 things. How many? Incoming interface, outgoing interface, source IP address, destination IP address, and the service. That's what we saw, right? And that means your layer 4 is also covered here. And when you talk about the layer 5, we're going to see it in our upcoming sessions that if you introduce the authentication over here, right? Or even if you're talking about these 5 particular things, the source IP, destination IP, source in incoming interface, outgoing interface, and the service, which is nothing but the port, the firewall is going to generate 5 tuple out of it, right? It's more like it has a bucket, right? It's going to put all these ingredients, which are nothing but uh, the source IP, the destination IP, right? Incoming interface, outgoing interface, right? And then you have the service, right? And it's actually going to generate a session out of it. It's going to generate a session ID out of it, which is nothing but a key, right? It's sort of a number, right? Which it actually puts in session list, right? So that's how your session layer is also covered, right? We are going to have more discussion about these because I'm going to put it for the, there is one of the concept that I want to discuss maybe later on, which is called dirty and mid dirty sessions. And that's why we are going to cover the fast path and slow path of the traffic when it actually traverses through the Fortigate firewall, right? So this part is also done, right? And the presentation layer is more about the encryptions and the encoding and decoding, right? So firewall would always do that. So this one is also covered. And if you want to talk about the application layer, this is more related to the payload, right? That is where your UTM actually comes up. This is something that I wanted to say, right? UTM is basically going to check for pattern, signature, signatures, right? Or it's going to check the payload of traffic. It means if I was actually talking to one of you guys, right? I just sent the traffic through the firewall. The first thing was that I have the VLANs in place. I have the SVIs created on the firewall. So my layer 2 is already covered. And then your firewall has the access control policies, which are nothing but the firewall policies, firewall rules, right? Which actually sort of contain the firewall action. So layer 3 is also covered. But within the layer 3, if you talk, if you just check the ingredients of that particular firewall rule, let me just open the firewall and let's have a discussion there as well. Admin, and then this is 123. I come here, HTTP. This is 129. Is it 129? Admin 123. I'm going to the policy of the objects. I'll go to the firewall policy. I'm going to open this one over here. Right, these 4 things are actually going to cover your firewall action. And later, when you move to this particular part, which are the security profiles, that is why you say that you want to check what exactly is happening with this particular traffic. You want to check the pattern of this. So if I was actually talking to some of any of you, right, any traffic that goes through this firewall will be checked for its payload. Will be checked whether the packets are actually matching with whatever the file you actually claim, right? So what exactly happens is when you have the UTM configured, right? When you have the UTM fully rolled out, one of the guys over here wants to talk to some other PC over here, right? It sends the packet here. It's tries to send this packet through the firewall. This firewall is going to get the signatures or patterns of these packets. It means it's going to decrypt this packet at layer 7. How it would be able to do that, we'll take that up when we will discuss the SSL decryption, right? So you're going to configure this firewall in such a way that it would have the privileges of checking this packet at the layer 7. It's actually going to see what exactly is contained at the application layer. It could see the payload of this particular packet, and then within the payload, what it basically tries to do is it just tries to match the patterns of that particular traffic with the pattern or signature DB of its own, right? So this firewall already has one of the DBs over here. It has a database which contains signatures for almost each and every traffic. It contains signatures, patterns for each and every packet, right? Whichever is actually running in the world, right? And where does it actually get this signature database from? A question to you guys. Where would it get that signature DB?
To
From
check
FortiGuard
the traffic.
servers.
Yeah, I guess we just mixed up two voices. So if you can just go ahead again.
Yeah, from the FortiGuard servers.
Correct. Yeah. So it's going to get that from FortiGate servers. Nikhil, you have an answer for this? I guess you were saying something.
No, actually, I was saying that it's used to check the traffic if it's a legitimate or not.
Yeah. I mean, that's the whole point, right? It's actually going to check the traffic whether it's legit or not, right? And that's why you break it down. The first one was you do it on the base of IPs. The next one was on the base of payload of that particular packet, right? And payload is always present at the application layer only, right? So it gets this signature DB from the FortiGuard. This is something that we had discussed in our in our first sessions, right? In the early session. So this is the FDN server, which is basically nothing but the threat intelligence center, right? It's hosted on cloud. This firewall is always in a real-time communication with it, right? After every hour, it's actually going to get the database from this particular FDN, making sure that it has the latest DB present with it so that it can use that to match all the traffic with that DB, right? And what exactly is contained in that DB is signatures of the traffic with their ratings, right? If PC1 was talking to PC2, right, and you sort of send the PDF file, right, it's going to look for the PDF. It's going to look for the layer 7. It says that, okay, the traffic actually matches with the PDF file, should be legit one, right? And it's going to tell you what rating is there for the signature, right? And based on the rating, it's actually going to allow or deny this particular traffic, right? So you get the packet only when firewall allow when firewall lets it go through it, right? And important thing here is that for every traffic, whenever it tries to cross through the firewall is actually going to find a match, right? It tries to find the pattern of that particular packet at layer 7. I'm just repeating it again, right? You find the pattern, you try to look for a match in the DB, right? If you are able to find the match in the DB, right, then you're also going to check what is the rating, right? If it has a good rating, you pass it through. If it has a bad rating, then you just drop it then and there, right? So this all inspection here is actually happening with the help of signature matching, right? So every traffic patterns are actually matched against the signature database. You got it from the FDN, and based on this particular reason, you call this particular inspection as signature based detection, right? And just because your firewall is in real-time communication with the FDN, it is only for this reason you call it NGFW. You can never call a firewall NGFW if it's not in real-time communication with any of the cloud servers, who is actually feeding it with the latest databases of the signatures, right? This is the only reason you can call it NGFW, right? It definitely would be stateful firewall, right? But I guess we already discussed the stateful and stateless firewalls, have we?
Yes, we are.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. So it might be a stateful firewall. It's able to keep track of the connections using the session IDs. But if it's not in real-time communication with the external server, which is actually feeding it with the latest DBs, then you won't call it NGFW, right? So this is the whole point of discussion, how you sort of introduce the firewall in your network and how your firewall is actually going to help you with the layer 7 inspection, right? Again, from the configuration point of view, you always would need to configure the firewall in such a way that it would be able to decrypt your traffic, right? We're going to see that in our upcoming sessions. Now, let me come to the lab.
Actually, I had a question.
Yes, go ahead.
Like, do we have to take a separate license for the threat intelligence center?
Correct, yeah, we do.
Okay.
See, the only reason why we need to do that is because uh, if this is the firewall over here, right, for it to communicate with the FDN, right, for FDN to feed it with the latest DBs, right, it needs to be registered on their portals, right? They must know that, okay, there's one of the firewalls located in one of the countries at this particular place with this latitude and longitude, right? We sort of need to feed it with, this is the public IP address of that particular firewall, right? And you register it that there on the portal, and you also purchase the licenses. Purchase licenses, right? And they call these contracts, by the way. They don't call them licenses, they call these contracts. Plus, the portal is support.fortinet.com. Support.fortinet.com is one of the portals, and you basically create an account for there, right? And yeah, based on that account, you get all these contracts later on, and you sort of, I mean, it's a full-fledged process of all the bling and rest of the things that actually happen there. And if you have one of the contracts, it means you're going to get billed, and all these invoices will be linked to this particular account, which you're actually going to create there, right? Or uh, even if there are some of the uh, things, for example, you want the tax support, right? You want to talk to one of the guys from the Fortinet who is actually a very expert on this particular product, right? You want to sort of help with the troubleshooting, you can get those contracts as well. Or even if at some point your Fortigate just stops functioning because of a hardware failure, you can raise the RMAs, right? You can request for the replacements using the RMAs, right? And you can generate those RMAs here only, right? So all these things are basically tracked here only, and this is the portal where you can use it. If you want to check what are the active contracts on your firewall only, so what you can do is you can, this is the GUI over here. You can come here, go to the system, go to the FortiGuard, right? This is where you could actually see what are all the contracts which are active for this particular firewall, right? Since this is the evaluation license firewall, it's running on the evaluation license, the UTM is never part of the evaluation, right? Because for the UTM, you actually want to contact to the FDN, right? And FDN doesn't just feed any of the firewalls, right, which is not registered on their portal. I mean, it's something that's not free of cost, right? So you could say the FortiGate support, it is not supported, virtual machine not supported. Okay, virtual machine, I mean, virtual machine says that what is the current license of this particular VM, right? Because it's a virtual machine right now. It's hosted in my AU. These are the allocated CPUs. You could at max go up to 2 if I'm not wrong. Allocated RAM is 2 GB. Okay, you get one CPU and the maximum RAM that you can actually get for this one is 2 GB, right? And then firmware and general updates, it's not supported. All of the things are actually not supported, right? And I was also discussing this one, FortiGuard updates. It means how you want to feed your firewall with the signature DBs, right? I kept it automatic, right? And it says update automatically within every 1 hour period. That means after every 1 hour, this particular FortiGate should query the FDN to get all the signature DBs, right? It would have been doing that, but now that we don't have the licenses, right? It's running on the evaluation license, so it fails. Right? It would never be able to make it to the FDN, right? And yeah, we're going to discuss the FortiGuard in detail later on, but yeah, just for the heck of it, I just explained it. Now, another thing that I wanted to, okay, let's go back to the topic. Any other question before we proceed?
No question.
All right. So let me, yeah, so last time we created this particular policy over here. The whole agenda was that we want an IT guy to access the internet, right? We gave him all the destinations. We have firewall action in place, we have NAT rules in place, and I discussed this thing last time as well, that whenever you see NAT option being turned on within the firewall policy, always make sure that it's just playing with your source. So this NAT is actually source NAT. It's not destination NAT, right? So if this packet actually tries to go to the internet, it's trying to talk to the facebook.com. So the PC that's behind this firewall is going to type facebook.com. You're going to get the IP address of facebook.com from your configured DNS servers, right? Your source IP and that destination IP will reach to this firewall, and only source will get changed. Source will get NAT. Destination won't be getting NATed, right? Security profile, we're going to take that up uh, in the future sessions, right? Logging I explained last time. Now, what I wanted to discuss here is now how you can enable or call multiple interfaces in the same policy. See, if I just come here and I want to say that, okay, this is my topology here. IT guys just allowed to the internet. I want to make sure that finance guy also has some of the requirements on the internet. So he wants to access some financial stuff, maybe some banking websites, right? So I just have to allow him. If I come here, I select VLAN 20, it just replaces the VLAN 10, right? So in those cases where you want to call multiple interfaces within a single policy, what you basically do is you uh, open the some of the hidden features of this firewall, right? So this firewall has more capability, but just to keep the GUI very simple, not to have each and everything present in this simple GUI, they said that okay, if there's a requirement for some of the options which at times might not feel that important, let's just get all those features and options somewhere else. And when people want to use those features, they can come here, use this particular option, which is actually called feature visibility, right? The name itself says that it is something that's actually going to help you with the visibility of some other features, right? So I'm going to go to the system first. I go to the feature visibility here. I want to check for if there is any option regarding enabling multiple interfaces within a single firewall policy, right? There you go. Multiple interface policies is present in the additional features, right? So I'm going to just turn this on, right? I click on apply, and then I go to the policy and objects. I go to the firewall policy. So let me just check if I can just have another interface over here, right? You could see that the one more option actually popped up here. It means any, right? If I keep any here, it means whichever the interfaces are actually configured for this firewall, you are coming from any of those interfaces, you will be allowed to go to this particular destination, right? Which is all basically. It means everything would be allowed to go to the internet, right? As long as the source IP actually matches with that particular interface, right? This also has use cases. We're going to take this up in the when we're going to see the destination NAT, right? But for now, it is not required. So I'm going to call 20 and 10 here, right? And then someone just comes and says that, okay, the HR department also needs access to the internet or something, right? I'm going to call VLAN 30 over here as well, right? I'll close this and I just click on OK. And there you go. You have all the interfaces actually going to the internet, right? If I come here, I want to check whether my IP of this particular Windows machine is still intact. If just go to the command prompt, I do ipconfig. Okay, it's ipconfig. There you go. So 1.1 is the correct IP. Will it go to the internet? Ping 1.1.1.1. It does not. And what I suspect here is, let me just check this one. Go to the terminal, and there you have ifconfig. You have the IP address in place 2.1. And if I have to check IP route 1. Okay, 2.10 is the gateway for this one. So the IP configurations on the PCs are still intact. Something, we have the policy in place as well, but yeah, something in between is just breaking. Let me just confirm the Linux 3. If I do IP config here, ifconfig. There you go. So it also has 3.1. If I do IP route, it has 3.10 as gateway. So all these three pieces are okay. The firewall policy, let me just check that once again. 10, 30, 20, all of these are fine. These are the incoming interfaces, and then outgoing interfaces port 1, which is this one, right? Source is 1.1. Okay, I need to add the rest of. Yeah, so IT guys already created here as an object. Let me just create one more. So again, I discussed this last time as well, that for you to add anything as a source or as a destination or even as a service, right? Firewall treats them as an object. You don't get an option to just type an IP over here, right? You don't get an option to type the IP here in the destination addresses. You can call something, right? So it means you have to define that IP address somewhere as an object, which is an address object, and later on call that here. That's the reason you just configure this one over here, right? So I need to create two more objects here and then call them in the same policy. So I'll just go to create, I go to addresses, right? I want to create fin guy here. What was the IP address of this one? Blue dot. I can keep this 32 as well. Why do I keep this 32, by the way?
For the single IP.
Correct. So there you go. You can, I mean, if you are working in the production, you put the ticket and date over here, right? If you want to color this one, where's the color? I like this one, so I'm going to keep this one as as the color here and click on this one, and then it becomes part of the policy. Fin guy was 2.1, right? Okay, let's move to the HR guy now. It's 3.1. I want to create one more, right? And by the way, let me just close this one here. You can call these addresses separately. I can go to the addresses over here. Let's have a look here. Look at my cursor. I was earlier in the firewall policy, but I sort of clicked on the destination, okay, source, and then created the address here only, right? I click on create and it just says me which address do you want to create, right? I can do the same thing, but from a different interface. I don't want to use the firewall policy now. I can go to the addresses. I say create new. It's asking me whether you want to create an address or address group. I say address, right? And there you go with the HR. 192.168.3.1/32. Control C, Control V, change it, and there you go. Always tick and date is always important if you are working in the production. I go to the firewall policy now and I can call it now in the source. Where is it? There you go. Right. So I'm going to click on OK. Right. So my firewall policy is in place. These three IPCs have everything in place. Let me just check if everything is intact in the switch. I do enable. I want to see show int stats. No configuration is here. Show int trunk. Possibly for the reason that I had restarted everything. Let's just configure the switch from the scratch. So just help me with the configuration. I'll start with the Ethernet 0/0. What's the VLAN for it? Yeah. Anyone? What's the VLAN for this particular interface? It's connected with the IT guy. IT guy belongs to VLAN 10. What's the VLAN for this one?
And we for IT10.
Okay. Coming to the Ethernet 0/1, I'll put the description as VLAN. Okay, description should be finance, switch port mode access, switch port access VLAN 20. And coming to the last one, Ethernet 0/3. I want to put the description as VLAN. No, it's HR. And then switch port mode access, switch port access VLAN 30. I want to end this. I do show int stats. There you go. With all the three VLANs, if I want to do show VLAN brief, there you go. 10 is part of the Ethernet 0/0, 20 is part of the Ethernet 0/1, and then 30 is part of the Ethernet 0/3, right? Now let's configure the trunk between the firewall and the switch. So I want to do config t int Ethernet 0/2 switch port mode trunk. Okay, switch port trunk encapsulation dot 1q switch port mode trunk. And then I want to put the description as well so that everyone, every time someone just comes here and types show int stats, he should get to know that this particular one is the uplink to Fortigate. I want to end this and then I do show int stats, show int stats. I'll just write this time. Okay, so if I do show int trunk now, let's check if it's up or not. Mode on dot 1q is encapsulation protocol and then it's trunking, right? So let me just go back to the PC. I want to see whether this one has now internet access or not. There you go. So it's able to reach to 1.1.1.1, right? Even if I come to any of the browsers over here and I type facebook.com, this particular PC usually is very slow. Let's move to the Linux one. Maybe in the meantime, it will just start working. Okay, still has the connection problems. What I can do here is I will just do facebook.com and it has to be https www dot. So there you go. For this particular PC, Facebook is working. If I come here and type https I do www.cnn.com, it's working, right? So all the three PCs should have each and everything working, right? And this is actually a very basic use case of if someone just tells you that, okay, all these three guys have the same requirement of going to the internet, you can just plug them up, call all of three, or all of the interfaces which are linking to these PCs or the departments. You can just call all them in a single firewall policy, and then they can go to the internet, right? And that's why we also try to understand what's the use case of any, right? If I don't worry about uh, which interface you actually come from, right? If I just come back to this firewall policy and just replace this with any, it should still work. I want to get rid of these interfaces, and we don't do this in the production. It's very important that you always specify the interfaces, right? So you never mention any in the firewall policies because it's a risk. Let me just check if the Facebook is still working here. So I would just refresh this one. There you go, it's still working. Is ping working? It's still working, right? If I want to do ping 1.1.1.1, it's working on this PC as well, the third one. 1.1.1.1. There you go, it's working, right? So this is the very basic use case of having multiple interfaces called in the policy, use case of any. Let's move to the concept of zones now, right?
I have one query. So, like after you modified the policy, don't we need to like commit the policy change, install the policy or commit the changes? Or is
So
it
correct, yeah, that's a very good question actually. So whenever you talk about committing a policy, right, there are some of the firewalls, right? There is a firewall policy, right? You came and started modifying it, right? Or you just created a policy. You can either create it or you can just modify it, right? Now the point here is the moment I did that, it just takes the changes right away, right? You don't have to commit it. But there are some of the firewalls. For example, if you want to talk about the Palo Alto firewall, right? If you want to play with the configuration, right? If you're just changing anything on the firewall, right? You change the address object, you change anything related to the HA, you change anything related to the interface configuration, firewall policies, routing. Unless and until you don't commit them, right? It's not going to change anything in the running configuration of the firewall, right? Here, the running configuration is changed straight away on the Fortigate, right? I'm talking about the firewalls. It's really important, right? Now, other way, I mean, you just came here on the firewall itself, change the configuration. As long as it's the Fortigate firewall, it just takes the changes right away, and then you're just done, right? It means the impact is live, right? You're going to see the changes or the consequences of the changes in a single flash, right? If you're talking about the Palo Alto firewall, right? In the Palo Alto firewall, if you don't commit, your changes do not become part of the running configuration. It means they don't have an immediate effect, right? Now, the other way could be, I'm talking about these two vendors only. This is Fortigate. Just make it a little clean because it's an important discussion. So we're just trying Fortigate. We're trying Palo Alto, right? On the Fortigate, you made a change, right? You have an immediate effect, immediate impact, or you call it uh, effect as well, right? On the Palo Alto, you made a change, right? You have to commit it to make an impact. And when I say impact, it actually is nothing but making the configuration changes, config changes, part of running configuration, right? So this is how you basically discuss this, I mean, explain this. Now, this is case one. The other case is case two, right? Let's say that you have an organization where you have not just single firewall, you have hell of firewalls, a flood of firewalls, right? Almost like 100, 200 firewalls. That's what large companies actually have. So if I have 200 firewalls over here, I have one firewall, another firewall, right? What you can basically do here is uh, you manage them from a device that's called FortiManager, right? And likewise, if you have multiple Palo Alto firewalls, you manage them using a device which is called Panorama, right? All these changes that you want to push on the firewalls, right, are actually done from this particular device only. You don't touch the firewall. It's called this concept is actually called zero touch provisioning. It means we don't want to touch the actual devices, right? But we want to do it from a single pane of glass, which is the FortiManager over here, right? And anything that actually needs to be done on the firewall needs to be changed on the firewall. I want to do it from this FortiManager only. Likewise for the Palo Alto firewalls, anything that you want to change, you want to do it from the single pane of glass, central management, which is Panorama. You don't want to touch the firewall. This is the concept of zero touch provisioning, right? Or you call it central management. There you go. If you want to make a change over here, you have to install those changes, which is nothing but committing in the FortiManager language. If you want to make the changes on the panorama, you have to commit them to make them show up here on these firewalls. Now there is one more way of having this on the Fortigate firewalls as well, right? I mean, even if you are interacting with the firewalls, it is case 3, right? You can have sort of a similar concept in the Fortigate firewalls, right? We'll take that up in the future where you basically check the configuration transactions, right? People won't use it. They don't just want to make things a little messy or just extend the verification and rest of the things. It has a very rare case, a rare use case. At least I have not seen it being used anywhere, right? So in configuration transaction, what you basically do is if you are an L1 engineer or maybe you are an L2 engineer, you want to change anything on the FortiGate, right? Right? Anything that you change, you being a user or you being an administrator, you're changing anything on the FortiGate firewall, right? It's going to become part of a config transaction, right? And then there's a super user, which is actually a root user of this firewall comes, right? This root user actually comes, which is nothing but the super user. And he actually checks the configuration transaction, verifies it, and approves it. And then only that configuration becomes part of running configuration, right? This is how the concept of commit actually works here. It is very close to commit, but it actually is not commit, right? Because the user or the administrator himself doesn't commit the changes. It's someone else who has the root privileges, who has this super user access of this particular firewall. He comes and verifies the change. He can just discard them, or he can just let them become part of the running configurations, right? Does that answer the question?
Yes, it does. Sorry,
All
I
right.
wasn't.
Any further questions before you go ahead?
Which one is better, like immediate implementation or the commit feature?
The commit one. See,
Is
I'll
there
tell you.
anything?
Yeah, I'll tell the difference as well. Yeah, go ahead. Do you want to add anything to the question?
No, no.
All right. So, I mean, everything has its requirements, right? Everything. Why I'm writing this? I don't need to write this. So let's talk about. I have a company or the production where I have a single firewall running, right? It's a very small team, right? And considering the budget plus the skill set that you actually have, or you could say the resources that you actually have, right? You can neither go with the zero touch provisioning, which is buying a FortiManager in the production and then pushing each and everything from that device only, where you basically install, verify the changes before making them or pushing them on the FortiGate, right? If I would just go ahead and bring the FMG, which is FortiManager, every time I want to change anything before pushing them on the firewalls, there is a it's called installation preview. It means you sort of get to view all the changes that you're actually going to push on the firewall, right? That means you're verifying the things, right? Verification before committing the changes, right? That's what you can do on the FortiManager. But if you belong to a corporation, you belong to an office, right, or a company, right, where your line of activity was something different, maybe like you manufacture the tires, right, or you manufacture the uh, aerospace engines, right, or anything else, right? You manufacture the chemicals, something like that, right? In those cases, if the team is very small, your firewalls are very less in number, right? Your budget doesn't allow you to get the FMG in the network, right? At that time, you just go ahead with making changes on the firewall itself, right? Now, the best thing that you can do here is you can go with the config transactions, right? It means that you have someone else making the changes, and then an L3 engineer comes and verifies the changes and then only lets them become part of the running configuration, right? There are a couple of things in this. It is running, I mean, it is, the first thing is, it is time consuming, right? And the second thing is the cost, because say for example, if you don't want to pay, if you don't want to have the L2 engineer, you just rely on the L3 engineer only, right? He can just come and make the firewall changes, that's it, right? And by the way, if you're more worried about having all these things, right? You say that if L3 comes, he makes the changes, he messes up the things. What people do is they create SOPs for the changes. Everything that needs to be changed on the firewall, right, is discussed first, right? It's called CR procedure, by the way, change request procedure, right? Whenever you get an approval to make any change on the firewall, generally nobody has the root access unless and until you are an expert on that particular firewall, right? Everything that needs to be changed on the firewall is a very critical thing. You need to get an approval for that from the management first. Anyone who is very aware of the infrastructure, right? You have to get the approval of this one from that particular guy, right? Companies have the procedure for that, right? And that actually is called the CR procedure, right? You document the stuff first, you explain the business use case of that change, right? And then only you go to the firewall and make changes. And by the way, this particular SOP also contains a rollout plan, the backout plan, rollback plan, sorry, rollback plan, which means if my changes are actually going to impact the production, I have this plan, which also is documented in the same document, right? That I'm going to execute to make sure that the changes get reverted and then we are back on the previous configuration, right? This is how you actually take care of it. And every time you're actually making the changes, you have people who can sit for the second set of eyes. It means if Nasir is actually making change on the firewall, right, someone else just comes, sits and sees what I'm actually doing. Just to make sure that we have multiple sets of eyes who could see these things on the screen and then verify before, uh, we mess up anything in the production, right? The other thing is you could just say that I have a very great budget, right? I can bring FMG in the production, right? And then have zero touch provisioning. If I have more like 50 firewalls, right? I can manage all these 50 firewalls from a single pane of glass. Is it pane? Pan. Single pane of glass, right? And then it's also called central management, something that I just told, MGMT. And then you're actually going to manage all those firewalls from that particular device, which is FortiManager. And there you get to, you can make the changes. You make the changes, but you get to view the changes before pushing them on the firewall, right? So before installation, you're actually going to see these are the things that would be actually modified on the firewall. So it is something that's not in something that doesn't make an immediate impact, right? So again, it's always dependent on the requirements, right? Things can vary based on your budget, based on your requirement, and based on the cost, based on the time that you actually have, right? So from the operations point of view, if you're actually taking care of the operations of any of the customers, all these things are actually planned, right? If there is anything where you say that there's a very huge impact, because I don't want people to just make the change and they have a live impact, right? At that time, you sort of come with a pre-plan, which is actually a SOP document. You go to the management, they discuss it, approve it. Then only you go and make the change. And at the time of making the change, you have someone sitting in front of you or sitting on the call as well. You share the screen, right? And then you have the multiple sets of eyes actually verifying all those changes, right? And then same document also contains the rollback plan. If the changes don't work, you roll back, you revert the changes, right? We're going to discuss that one as well, how you basically roll back, right? And yeah, if you have a very good budget, you can go ahead with the Forti manager where you have the single pane of glass. And in fact, even if you have the Forti manager in place in the production, right, you still go through the same procedure. If you want to make change in the environment, right, it goes through a window which is actually called, I mean, you can just set for the operation meetings, tell the management these are the changes that we actually need to modify in our network. They approve it, then only you can make all those changes and you have a document basically to show, right? And then rollback plan is also mentioned, even if you have the FMG. I hope that answers the question.
Yes, it does. Thank you.
All right, guys. I will take the rest of the discussion in our upcoming class. I had to go for the dinner as well. So yeah, I'll see you next week. If you have any questions, further questions, or you want to add anything, or you feel like I'm going a little fast, any feedback is most welcome.
No, it's all good.
I have one request, Nasir. Is it possible? I think that 10 p.m. is too late, so I'm just requesting. Already, you're doing a good service, so I expect more people to join. I think if you make it, if you are having a free schedule, anytime earlier than this. So I'm not sure about your schedule if you're busy or you have some other